grandparents. So we put up these big walls and we basically were like, we don't want to go out to dinner alone. We want to take him. We want to be with him. You know, anyone can come over and see him, but we didn't leave him with a grandparent alone without us overnight or, you know, even for a couple hours until he was like, I don't know, maybe 6 months old.
The skill in DBT that Avery and I teach a lot called check the facts, which is when you have a worry thought or your brain starts catastrophizing, imagining the worst case scenarios, which mothers are wont to do sometimes naturally.
Another thing that I offer my followers in the Motherhood Super Guide is a template for this.
I'm using it for our new puppy. Starting,
Okay,
I have already started.
It's an incredible Google spreadsheet template that people can make a copy of and then fill in themselves, that basically allows you to visualize the whole mental load of what is going on in your relationship and in your life, and every task that needs to be done can be assigned to either you or your partner.
Well, we've got just about the coolest guest joining us today. She's a woman of so very many talents, a media maven brimming with creativity and true palpable passion and compassion. From her award-winning work at Refinery29 to her leadership as CEO of Lucie Fink Media, where she produces high-quality original content alongside coaching, consulting services, to her wonderful love story, to her new baby who possesses quite possibly the world's most beautiful eyes. We welcome the dynamo that is Lucie Fink. Hi, Lucie.
So much. Hi to both of you. I'm so honored, and that was probably the best podcast intro I've ever heard. So thank you.
I mean, I can't get over your child's eyes. Truly are like a captivating gift.
They're definitely. I mean, I know that now I'm taking it as like, oh, you think my eyes are pretty, but to follow the sentence, he does have my eyes, and on a baby, they do look very, very big and beautiful.
You both, the two of you, Emily and Lucie, you both have like gorgeously.
Yeah, Emily, look at yours too. They're glowing.
Thanks.
Are yours green or blue?
Depends on what I'm wearing, TBH.
Yeah. If I had my ring light going right now and just better lighting, you know, we could really blast these eyes open, but I'm sitting in front of a pretty dreary window right now. So this is all you're going to get.
So we're so happy to have you here. And just like a little fun connection, which I think actually speaks a lot, Lucie, to what I've found to be so empowering about your content and the work that you do, is that we met on a bus at a wedding. And I said, oh, I've got this podcast that I do for my therapy practice that I work at. And you gave me the advice, really connect with other creators to build your brand, to grow. And a couple of weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to connect with another creator. I'm going to connect with Lucie.
Taking the advice and flipping it back. I love it.
Turning the tables, if you will, Em.
Yeah. Well, that is the best. I mean, I'm not a podcast host yet. I might foray into that field in the future, but that's definitely the best advice I have for anything on social media, is building alongside other people, just because, you know, no one can do things alone. And it's just such a win-win when you can introduce your audience to new people, and then you can gather new eyeballs from their audience, and it's best advice.
So you now run Lucie Fink Media. Can you share a little bit more about your career journey with us and with our listeners? We've got to know a little bit more about what brought you from studying neuroscience earlier on to where you are today.
Yes. So I did go to Johns Hopkins, and I was, you know, declaring myself a neuroscience major during my freshman year. I was down the pre-med track, and I was pretty sure that I was going to end up being either a neurosurgeon or a dermatologist. I was also interested in plastic surgery. And I don't know, it was just sort of a childhood dream to be a doctor. I kind of grew up watching TLC's A Surgery Story and just going on YouTube and typing in like bloody operations and watching them. And so I always thought that meant that was my calling. Like the fact that I could stomach bloody shows meant maybe I should be a doctor. And so when I got into Johns Hopkins and I decided to go there, I figured, this is fate. Obviously, this is the most renowned medical school. I'm going to have to go down this path. So I started, and honestly, I loved my classes, specifically in the realm of what you guys talk about, like cognitive neuroscience and behavioral things. And I really was fascinated with all my courses, but I just always had this other passion and interest for media and performing. And the moment I got to Hopkins, I started blogging and doing video blogs for the university, and I joined an a cappella group. And I was just like immediately also in the performing space, and kind of was balancing these two interests and trying to figure it out. And by my sophomore year, I realized that the other students that were medical students were totally like in it to win it with the medical field. And it was just their whole life's calling. And they had all through high school, they had been doing internships at hospitals and shadowing doctors. Meanwhile, in high school, I was the president of the drama club and was just not on that path at all. So I don't know, I pretty quickly realized that the actual job of being a doctor and the lifestyle that would give me of working indoors, working under like, what are those lights called? Like fluorescent hospital lighting. Yeah. I don't know. And the hours and the lifestyle, it just wasn't actually fitting with my interests, even though the actual topic was interesting to me. Plus, I was also very intrigued by the idea of finishing school after 4 years and being able to transition into the real world. And if I was going down the medical route, it would be 10 more years of school. So I decided against it. I decided to switch my major to creative writing, go down a more creative field. You too. And I felt like that was the best fit. Hopkins didn't really have they didn't have like a social media school or the way SUNY Newhouse with, they have a lot of like broadcast journalism and things like that. Hopkins didn't have that. So I just chose creative writing, and I really dove into my extracurricular work of making videos for the university. I hosted a series on their YouTube channel all 4 years. And that was kind of the bulk of my college years. That sort of led me to a few really cool opportunities, one of which involved being a spokesperson on the Today Show when I was 19 and 20. And I went on the show repeatedly for a few years in a row as like a millennial voice, answering questions about teens and parents. And they used to have a segment called Parenting Today. And I was like a go-to millennial that they would pull to answer questions about spring break and how parents can talk to their kids and that kind of stuff. And graduating college,
No, hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So you mentioned it's so funny to me to hear that like you had the, Parenting Today segment back then when you were 19.
Yes.
That's incredible. I mean, Avery and I, we were talking about, you recently released that motherhood super guide,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And I just have to say, as Avery and I talk a little bit about our future direction and where we think we might be going in life, it is just an absolute treasure trove. Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about like, what is it, where can they find it, and what does it entail?
Yeah. So my motherhood super guide which it's funny because the Parenting Today segment was me being the teen, talking about how parents can talk to their teens. Now, my motherhood super guide is me being the parent and sharing with other parents how they can, better go through the experience that I went through of adding a new baby to your family. And basically, I wanted to distill all of the information that I had gathered in the past few years of trying to conceive and then getting pregnant and then having a baby, and pull it all into one digital offering that would really save my followers time and a major headache when it came to, figuring out all the things that I figured out over the course of years. And so basically the Motherhood Super Guide is a digital product. So when people buy it, they create an account on the back end, and then they log into this beautifully designed account on a platform called ItList, and they can see my super guide that is just seemingly an endless scroll. It's not endless, but it keeps going. And it starts at the trying to conceive stage and basically walks people through every single resource, product, tool, whether it's a website I used, an app I used, a physical product I used, and then also pulls content in. So every video I've ever made on certain topics. And with the trying to conceive stage, it's like basically how everything I learned about how to track my ovulation cycle to conceive. And I made a ton of videos on that. I share like a million podcasts I listen to about how to accurately time sex to conceive. There's all the ovulation strips and the products that I bought and ordered and used to track my LH levels. And then, that's trying to conceive. Then it moves into pregnancy, and it's just every product for myself during pregnancy, every resource I followed, every book I read, every podcast I listened to, and then moves into newborn stage. So every product for a baby, all the postpartum things for mom. And by the way, like, this is just the stuff I used and loved. And it's really, I think it's a good thing for people to do is to look at the super guide and then cross-reference it when they're building their own baby registry, because they don't need the exact same products I used, but like, it's good to see the types of products. Like, I feel like that's what's missing on these registries is like, where do I start? What do I even need? So using it as like a blueprint and then saying, okay, she has this stroller, maybe I want a different stroller, but at least I can check stroller off the list.
Right.
And it basically just keeps going all the way from newborn to like different ages. I share things that I haven't shared anywhere, like screenshots of my son's exact play, sleep, and feed schedules at different ages of his life, which I feel like some of my friends sent to me and was really like the Bible that I use as a guidebook. And then every toy that he loves, links to everything. A lot of times I try to give links in there that have extra discount codes. So it's almost like people are getting links and then being able to save money and time at the same time. And yeah, that's what the Motherhood Super Guide is. And it's really been my most successful digital product. And I've been so shocked because a decent number of the sales are people just like you guys who are not, don't have kids and also are not even trying to conceive right now and are just thinking they might want to in the next 5 years and want to be prepared.
Lucie, I downloaded this guide when I saw it come up on your page, like probably, I guess like a month and a half ago now, and I was traveling. I could not have been thinking less about this particular moment in time when I would be thinking about conceiving. And it is so incredibly useful. And a big part of that is because I find that a lot of, maybe I'm making an off base assumption, but I feel like so many of us are looking for tools that we would find and gather through friends and through multiple books. And you just did the work for me. So I don't have to do it. And it is extraordinarily relieving because I wonder if on some level, how was your process gathering this information during your journey before the idea of a super guide even came to be?
Before my super guide, just gathering it myself, it was just spread out over years and years of my life. And I'm the kind of person, as I've learned about myself recently, I'm the kind of person who, whatever stage of life I'm at, I just fully dive into exploring as much as possible and learning as much as possible about that stage. And it kind of consumes me while I'm in it. So when it was even before trying to conceive, when it was like trying to balance my hormones after the pill, it was like every book I was reading, every podcast I was listening to, every conversation with a friend, everything I was talking to my husband about was about my goal of balancing my hormones after coming off the birth control pill. And then, floating along to trying to conceive, you can imagine how my experience, at that point in time, just everything that I was learning about and talking about, and I was going deep, 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 was about how to conceive and the process. And I feel like I learned so much that my brain was just like swelling with all this information. And at the time, the only thing I could think to do was let me make a YouTube video or 5 about everything I'm learning and explain it in the simplest terms so that I can basically be a big sister to this audience and share with them what I've learned without them needing to spend the hours that I've just spent. And, those kinds of educational videos are so fun for me because I just like learn a topic and then I explain it very simply. And I feel like I've gotten so much feedback from people that they watched those videos or they bought the super guide and then got pregnant the first time they tried. And it's like, I almost feel responsible. Obviously I didn't do anything, but it's so nice to hear that. And of course, even if someone follows every step I'm sharing, they might have some infertility and it might not work. But for the people who aren't experiencing any infertility and just don't know how to time their sex to conceive, it's like, I can't believe I'm helping people have babies. Like that is just crazy.
Yes, absolutely. And with that in mind, like, is there any particular element of the guide that you're like, must watch, must click, go here, this is my, pride and joy component of the guide?
I think that the podcast sections, which you will find in each section, are incredibly useful because I have to say I'm a podcast junkie of like absorbing information through podcasts. And I feel like it's such a good medium to give people information that they remember and that just like delivered directly to your ears. Yes, total hair flip moment for you guys. I feel like the podcasts about how to conceive and the podcasts about pregnancy, and then later on you'll see podcasts in there about baby feeds and breastfeeding and nursing, and just those are really how I learned the bulk of the information that I know.
Fantastic.
Gosh, that is so incredible, Lucie. I mean, just hearing you talk, there's so many different elements that you're balancing on your journey toward motherhood. You're balancing your own self-care, you're balancing your baby's needs, you're balancing your relationship with your partner. And definitely in your videos, I do get that big sister flavor. So as a big sis here, can you tell us a little bit about how do you balance the different priorities in your own life with your husband, with your peanut, and with yourself?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it is really difficult. And I often myself don't feel very balanced. I kind of feel like every day is a struggle to find balance. And, I just do what I can to make sure that I'm getting a little of everything I need in a day. But I will say it never feels perfect. It never feels like, good, I've got it. I got the flow. Now everything's all good to go forever. But there are a few things that I can say. Number one is my husband and I are both working partners, and we both work from home, which I find to be an incredible blessing in the sense of whenever we both get a free moment, it's like we can come out of the room and sit with Milo while he has lunch, or we could be the ones to put him down for his nap, or at the very least, just give him a hug and say hi. And he is very aware that we're working. And when we need to go away, like he will say, Daddy working, and we'll close the door and he'll say goodbye to him. And so us being at home, I think, is helpful because it's not like we're just out of the house all day. So we do get a little taste of the baby, even though we are both working. Additionally, we also have in our city apartment, we had a nanny who worked with us 3 days a week, which was incredible. She was our baby's first nanny. And that was a very scary transition because it was like the first time you're letting a stranger take your baby out in a stroller on the streets of New York City. Yeah. But it was equal parts terrifying and amazing. Just the first time she went out with him, for us to be like, wow, we've been parents for a few months and now we're like at home without our baby. And this feels weird, but it also feels really nice to have this freedom. And now moving to our new house, we actually have a new nanny, and today is her first day. And so she's here with me now as we're living with family. And she is going to be a 5-day-a-week nanny. So we changed from 3 to 5, which was really useful for me because those 2 interim days, I was the one, because my job's more flexible, I was the one kind of picking up all the baby work, which I loved doing, but I definitely found myself, whereas a lot of parents are like, I just want to be with the baby, I don't want to work. I found myself saying, I really want to work. I really have creative ideas and I feel like I don't have enough time to execute them.
Yeah.
So we now have a nanny 5 days a week. Also, our son is going to be starting a twos program in the fall, and that will be like 4 days a week that he'll be going in the mornings. And on the side of that, I feel like because my job is so flexible, the one thing I've been able to do is figure out some of the things that really light me up and that allow me to either relax or feel like I'm in my body. And I have the luxury of being able to do those things and kind of pass them off as work if I'm creating content about them.
Yep.
So if I want to build a garden because that's meditative, or if I want to actually meditate or work out, a lot of these things I can do. And if I just set up my camera for like 3 minutes while I'm doing it, that's a piece of content and that's me kind of doing work. And so that's one of my favorite things about this job, is that whatever I want to do or whoever I want to become and transition into, as long as I'm bringing my followers along for the ride, I can kind of do that.
I hear in what you're saying here, like 3 things that come to mind right off the bat. One is kind of the statement of, yeah, the balance is this daily struggle, this pursuit, this progress point rather than perfection. And that's one of the things that Em and I talk a lot about, is that it's not about perfection, it's about progress and learning about yourself, learning about your relationship with your husband, learning about your relationship with yourself, learning about your relationship with Milo, with your support network, and figuring out, okay, as I problem solve, having this length, 5 versus 3, makes the difference for me to be able to build mastery around my job, to accumulate pleasant experiences, and then finagle that into something that really allows me to continue generating more exciting, interesting, big sis content for at least moi.
Absolutely. And, another thing is that when our son was first born, my husband and I we had a very different approach to accepting help from our family. And we both have 2 parents that are still alive and still around and still very much want to be involved with our son. But my husband and I, at the start, were we had a lot of big boundaries up.
Lucy, this is what we talked about on the bus that hit the nail for me. I was like, sorry.
Yes, we basically didn't want to feel like our parents were our child's parents. We wanted them to feel like grandparents and that we were parents. So we put up these big walls and we basically were like, we don't want to go out to dinner alone. We want to take him. We want to be with him. Anyone can come over and see him, but we didn't leave him with a grandparent alone without us overnight or, even for a couple hours until he was like, I don't know, maybe 6 months old. Yeah. And when we ultimately got comfortable and started leaving him, at least for me, it just opened up this floodgate of like, this is phenomenal. Like, what was I doing hoarding him and making him all mine when he is, first of all 4 of our parents are respectful. They know that he's not their baby. So I didn't have to worry at all about them stealing him away from us. But I think the biggest thing is that they enjoy time with him. He enjoys time with them. It's good for him to get to be with other people so that he can practice separation and so that he could just get more comfortable being around other people. And it gives Michael and I this time to go be off on our own. And that first date that we went on, like, I came home on a cloud. I came home just being like, this is what I was missing for 6 months. And this is why I feel like this is a big contributor as to why parenthood so far has felt like my whole life has made a big 180. And the fact that we got that back was just life-changing. And so since then, we've done a lot of letting go and letting other people in. And we've gone on 2 trips since then, just the 2 of us. And, when I met you, Avery, we were at a wedding that we didn't bring him to, and we left him behind, and little things like that make all the difference. And I definitely think, my husband and I had been together since high school, and we thought going into parenting that we had this incredibly strong relationship that nothing could shake. And even our relationship went through rockiness and tumultuousness when the baby came. So I always say to people, like, if you aren't going into it with a steady foundation, I can't imagine how it would be disrupted, because it's even can disrupt something that was very rock solid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just that you have that love and that connection and respect going into it, it just kind of gives you a little bit of an extra resolve. One thing I wanted to address is you were talking about how initially you had these big boundaries up with your in-laws and your folks, and there might have been some what I would call worry thoughts about, oh, what's it going to be like to leave our son with the grandparents? We don't want anyone feeling like they're taking on a caretaker role. So there's a skill in DBT that Avery and I teach a lot called check the facts, which is when you have a worry thought or your brain starts catastrophizing, imagining the worst case scenarios, which mothers are wont to do sometimes naturally. But being able to really check in and talk back to yourself and say, hey, wait a second. Okay, we left Milo. How did it go? Did the catastrophe that I was imagining, did it happen? Did they take over and say, all right, he's our son now? No, and kind of like going back and forth with those interpretations, being able to say, oh, I can handle this. And it's so nice that at the end of that night, you felt like, yes, this is amazing, because it showed you and Michael that you really need to keep doing something called accumulating positives, to keep having pleasant experiences beyond your status as a new mommy and a new daddy. You have to do the things that fill your bucket so that you can come together as parents. And I'm just so, so glad that you guys had that opportunity.
Yeah. And speaking of filling our buckets, we find that one of the ways that we have been able to each fill our own individual buckets in this experience has really been through a give and take. So like, unfortunately, when you have a baby, unless you have childcare around the clock, you have to plan with your partner if you're going to go do something and make sure that they're around. And so a lot of our scheduling is, you get these 2 time slots and go do something while I'll be on Milo duty, and then I'll go do my thing during these times. And then we can both obviously plan our own schedules however we want, whenever we have childcare present. But it's just been a lot of balance, and even things like, okay, who's going to do the morning routine with him? Who's going to do the bath time and dinner, and who's falling into these roles? And actually, another thing that I offer my followers in the Motherhood Super Guide is a template for this.
I'm using it for a new puppy starting. Okay, I have already started.
It's an incredible Google spreadsheet template that people can make a copy of and then fill in themselves, that basically allows you to visualize the whole mental load of what is going on in your relationship and in your life. And every task that needs to be done can be assigned to either you or your partner, so that you can see visually. And this is important, because the mental load, it's often these like hidden tasks or hidden things that carry a lot of mental weight, but it's not like you're doing something physical. So for example, when it comes to Milo, I have naturally picked up the mental weight of being the one to figure out what activities he needs to be doing, and figuring out based on his age level and skill level what types of classes he should be in and what types of play groups, and being the one to research those. And then as he grows, what milestones and what do we need to change? And that's been one of my tasks. Whereas with Michael, he's doing a lot of physical hands-on things. Like, he does all the morning wake ups. He usually does bath time. He is present for like he honestly does most of the diaper changing. And then he manages a lot of like ordering our diapers, ordering wipes, keeping things stocked. It just so happens that a lot of the mother tasks, I find, at least with a lot of my mom friends, are not tangible tasks that you could point to and say, look at all the things I've done in a day. It's just all up here weighing you down. And it's really nice to see things broken out on a spreadsheet so that you can make sure that you're each carrying an equal amount of load. And I don't know if I think it's people get really, I don't know, touchy about it needing to be 50-50, or, it doesn't always need to be 50-50. Obviously, if your relationship, for example, if the mother is working and the father is staying at home, obviously the mother has these other tasks in her life, like she can't do 50% of things with the baby because she's carrying other weight of making money and doing other things. But I think that it's just useful to see everything laid out, look at who's doing what, and it's color coded so you can really see who's carrying more weight and then adjust if need be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this reminds me of a lot of these concepts that we talk about actually in couples work. One of these skills, which you could apply to any relationship, any partnership, of relationship mindfulness, of just being mindful of not only your own experience, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, but also the experience of the other person in that space. And this really distills it to something that you can look at, that is in itself a fact-checking mechanism that can help you, maybe use some of your own interpersonal effectiveness skills to say, hey, Michael, I need XYZ because I'm feeling XYZ. I'd really appreciate it. It just sets that stage. Wanted to talk about, there's a stat that I pulled from WHO, 10% of pregnant women and 13% of women who've just given birth experience a mental disorder, primarily depression. And there's a lot of research cited on maternal mental health. And I'm wondering, brass tacks, how you take care of your mental health and whether that's evolved and shifted throughout the process of becoming a mother.
Absolutely, it has. It's actually just continued to evolve and shift throughout my life because I never grew up being in therapy. I never grew up feeling like I identified with having any sort of mental health disorder. Going into motherhood, I think I was just in for a bit of a rude awakening because I did not expect to feel any kind of way. As far as mental health goes, my pregnancy was, as far as emotions go, very level. I did not experience like a roller coaster the way a lot of pregnancies are depicted in the media. And so I kind of just assumed, when the baby comes, I'm going to feel like this. And I definitely didn't feel like this. I wouldn't say I felt like this for people who aren't looking because it's a podcast. I wouldn't say it dipped super low, like a deep, dark depression. I was actually talking to my husband the other day, trying to verbalize like if we thought that I had minor postpartum depression, because in the moment I didn't think I did. And actually I went to my doctor for my 6-week visit and she looked me in the eyes and she was like, "You're good. You don't have it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like as if she could tell from like how I was looking. And she was like, you might have been experiencing baby blues, but you do not have postpartum depression. And I said, "Okay, thank you," and moved on. And, around that 6-week mark, I was kind of coming out of my fog anyway. So I didn't think too much about it. But I think that the time that I gave birth, for a handful of reasons, maybe caused the experience to be a little bit darker than it would be under other circumstances. So just 2 things off the bat, like first thing was that it was winter, which I genuinely think is a big factor of having a baby, especially in the Northeast. It was getting dark at 4:00 p.m., which in any year I'm upset at that, let alone my whole life had just changed. I'm inside with this baby that I now feel scared over, and it's getting dark. It was all just like a little scary and heavy. And then secondly, it was the resurgence of COVID. It was during like the Omicron wave. And so having my parents and family come over was like a threat, which you would never want to feel like that. To have the people closest to you over is threatening to the life of your baby is just, I can't imagine the parents with babies in the heart of the first wave of COVID. At least we had like vaccines and things like that. But it was definitely stressful. And if I could time a second pregnancy, I would try to have a baby in a brighter time of year. But I definitely think that I experienced deep baby blues, and just the whole experience of coming home from the hospital. And then because he was 3 weeks early, it was very disruptive to my work schedule and at least how I had planned it in my head. I was ready for a December baby and I had a November baby. And time wise, he came and like all my work had to kind of stop, and I was breastfeeding, and as far as my labor and delivery goes, everything was like as easy as it could possibly have been. I got the smallest size possible tear during labor, and everything healed well. And even that felt difficult to manage postpartum. I just remember the experience of family coming over to meet him, and everyone is just overjoyed. I know how they felt. I've met babies before. It's like the most exciting thing ever to come meet a baby, and everyone's coming over to meet him. And I'm in the bathroom, like bleeding and changing pads. And I remember at one point I was like in the bathroom dealing with myself and I came out, and someone who was over had been changing Milo's diaper and his umbilical cord fell off. And they were like, look, his umbilical cord fell. And I was just like, no. Like, I missed this moment because I'm in the bathroom bleeding. Like, this sucks to be the mom. So there are just definitely some early moments that were shockingly different from how I envisioned they would be. And having a therapist was helpful during those times. But I think what's scary to me about postpartum depression, and I obviously fear it for my next go around as well, is that it feels to me like a part of it is just the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
Doesn't have anything to do with your prior mental health history. It's like purely just based on how your body is handling the hormones in that moment. And that's what scares me, is that someone who has no history of any severe mental health issues might have a baby and just like have postpartum psychosis or postpartum depression, and these things that are legitimately terrifying. And so there's a little bit of an element to it of worry.
And Lucie, I think what's so incredible about having you here with us today is you get to share your story, you get to share your experience, and that helps reduce the stigma around it. Because to your point, I think a lot of new moms who maybe haven't had previous experiences in therapy, who maybe don't have any sort of diagnosable mental health disorder. We all have mental health, right? Everyone has that. It can be such a shock. And so I think being able to practice some self-validation and say, okay, anyone who was in my shoes would absolutely feel that same way. That moment when you walked out of the restroom and like, oh, look, the umbilical cord, and you did this.
Yeah.
Of course you did, right? Of course you did. I can't imagine a new mom who wouldn't have that experience. And I think being able to really take a step back and say, wait, this is coming from somewhere, right? When we say that to ourselves, it helps make it more palatable. It helps make it something that we can really accept. We can say, okay, this is a new part of motherhood. I'm not used to it. I can give myself a little self-compassion. I don't need to judge myself. I'm not a bad mom for this. I'm a mom who's doing what she needs to do, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's what's interesting too is that I had a really close friend that had a baby recently, and I prepared her for what I went through, and she's had this baby now for 2 weeks, and at least from the outside so far, her experience seems to be just dandelions and roses. Sure. And our baby was, quote, not a good sleeper in the very beginning. And by the time he turned 8 weeks, he was only sleeping at night, like 1.5 hour chunks. So he was waking up almost every 2 hours until we did a sleep training. And my friend, that to me, I felt like made this experience 10 times worse because I was so sleep deprived. It was just like as if I was being tortured. And I kind of really warned my friend of this. And I just checked in with her today, and I'm like, how's it going? And she's like, everything's good. He's 2 weeks old. He's been sleeping 5-6 hour stretches at night. And, I'm asking her like, what are your emotions? Like what's happening in your head? How's your tear? She had the same tear that I had. And she's like, I feel good. I feel really good. I'm so happy. He's so cute. And I'm like, it's so funny because I also felt those emotions at times, but then I also felt others. And it's funny how we feel like I felt the need to really tell her what it was going to be like for her. And that's not her experience at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just named, I mean, the basis of the therapy that we both practice, which is, we're holding a dialectic in the treatment that we do, acceptance and change. There is this dialectic at play in what you just named of something that seems like an opposite can be true at the same time. I love my cute child and I'm sleep deprived and I'm feeling like this is torture. That can exist at the same time. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And provide the self-validation in that moment while learning from that experience and saying to friend, hey, I'm here if you need me.
Yep.
I'm here if you need me, and I'm here for the joy, and I'm also here for the downs, which I don't think a lot of mothers, I mean, I'm thinking about one very beloved person in my life who we were at a retreat together and she just started crying. And it was about 7 months after she'd given birth. And it was like, we'd been doing yoga. It was very like body and heart opening, healing experience. And my sisters and I just went around this person and just hugged her and held her because we don't give space to mothers to have dialectics. Like we don't tell moms that that's okay. In fact, that's messaged as you're bad. You're bad. And I actually think like my friend that I'm thinking of is a human being who wasn't sleeping well and loves her child and was kind of struggling with some body image stuff. And she finally had the space to open up, and how beautiful that moment was. So
yeah,
I encourage you to keep doing that, regardless of whether it's dandelions on the outside.
exactly. Because I mean, you can't go wrong. Either they're going to be pleasantly surprised or they'll be prepared.
Yes. Yes.
And so, Lucie, earlier I had talked a little bit with you about how do we prioritize different things? How do we prioritize different relationships? The relationship with the self, with my child, with my spouse. Another skill that we talk about in DBT is called ABC Please. And specifically, the please skills are all about reducing your susceptibility to unpleasant emotions by taking care of your body, right? So we're talking about that brain-body connection. So whether it's treating physical illness, eating balanced meals, or getting exercise, we really want to make sure that we are taking care of our health overall. And I'm curious, as a new mom and as an entrepreneur, how do you practice those please skills? How do you take care of your brain by taking care of your body?
Yeah. And so I got a lot of answers here. So first thing really kicked in 6 months postpartum, which is when my desire to work out came back. And actually came back is not the right phrase. Came because I never worked out before having a baby. I did yoga every so often when I lived downtown in Manhattan, but my whole life, I've just never been an exerciser at all. And I think part of that comes from having thin privilege in my life. And my whole life growing up, my whole family, like my twin sister, my mom, my brother, everyone is like, has the same slim build. And so from a societal standpoint, I was never told that I needed to exercise, and I never did it. And I never enjoyed it either. And then I only found yoga in my adult years after a Refinery 29 video about yoga. Then I really dove into it and I loved that. And I was getting flexible and strong. But then I kind of stopped it around COVID, and I was not exercising at all when I got pregnant and had a baby. And then around 6 months, I just had this burst of, I'm just feeling like the desire, maybe it was the desire to have like that pocket of time for myself. I don't know what it was, but I all of a sudden was like, I'm getting a trainer and I'm going to start doing strength training, and I'm not looking to change my body in any way. I just want to get strong and be able to hold my baby as he grows. And so I got a trainer who I started working with 2 times a week in the city. And now, even though I don't live in the city anymore, I'm going to continue to work with her virtually. So 2 days a week, I'm doing strength training. I think another main thing that I do is really prioritize sleep. I wear an Oura ring mostly for my natural cycles integration, because that's my form of birth control now. But I also like religiously track my sleep stats on the Oura ring, and it really does inspire me. I think I use it in a really positive way where I'm not looking at it necessarily and getting upset by the stats. It's more inspiring for me. Like I almost want to go to bed earlier because I want to get a good sleep score. And, if that is helping me improve my health, then I'm happy for that to be the tool. So I definitely my husband and I have been talking a lot about what time we need to be in bed with the lights off if we want me to get all the sleep that my body needs by the time I need to be up in the morning. And so we've just kind of backtracked it, and we've tried to set our night into a nice routine, even though we're not living on our own space now. We've tried to set it up where every night we do a few minutes of meditation together before we go brush our teeth, and then we brush our teeth. And then if we want to watch a show, we can, but we have to first pick up our books and read for at least 5 minutes. And what sometimes happens is we're just like into our books once we start it, and then we don't end up wanting to watch anything. Or sometimes we're done with the books and we watch a little show right before we go to sleep. And we've just been prioritizing that bedtime, and that's been making a difference. And then I think the last thing would probably be from a food standpoint. This one's a little inadvertent, but it's become more intentional. But because I was diagnosed with celiac disease right around the time of coming off the pill, I had to adjust my whole diet and cut out gluten. And I realized that going gluten-free, like 100% gluten-free, really just inadvertently makes a person so much healthier all around, because you realize that almost everything that you used to eat that was considered like a junk food or something processed, almost everything has gluten in it. And so going gluten-free kind of cut out a lot of the stuff that I used to just religiously snack on, that while it wasn't causing me to gain weight, it was definitely not healthy for my body. And I know that for sure. And I'm assuming my skin was compromised from it, and probably my sleep quality was compromised. And now going gluten-free, my diet is comprised mostly of just like real foods. I eat a lot of eggs and vegetables and fruit and meat and fish. And then I do have a lot of snacks, but the snacks I'm going for are all gluten-free snacks, which obviously there are gluten-free Oreos. So that's not saying that much, but we do tend to have snacks that are like rice cakes or I don't know, like lentil chips, things like that, that I just feel like are not so packed with unhealthy oils and artificial ingredients you can't pronounce. And actually just the other day was my birthday, and I went to the movies and I had Sour Patch Watermelon, which is gluten-free.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, don't hold me to it. If someone's celiac, maybe check for yourself. But I had Sour Patch Watermelon and Raisinets and popcorn. And it was also my birthday. So I had had a gluten-free birthday cake before. And I woke up in the middle of the night with like a fire in my stomach. I'm not even kidding. Which honestly, maybe it's because the Sour Patch Watermelon is not gluten-free. Now I'm considering that could have been the option. But if it is gluten-free, I don't know, it just was real proof to myself that like that has not been my diet for a while. And that type of amalgamation of junk food in one night used to be my normal Saturday at the movies. And I never used to get a stomachache because of it. And so it's just kind of showing me how my gut has definitely changed and is now definitely a lot healthier and can't really tolerate me eating that way anymore.
I think that there's a functional medicine, what is it? Parsley Health that I have an appointment at in short order. And I'm really excited about working with them just because I've noticed that similar phenomenon of actually prompted by going to Oppenheimer and having a very similar kind of series of, and I just woke up and I was like, I'm going to have insane diarrhea in this bed if I don't get out of here right now. So I'm going to Parsley to check what's going on. I did want to ask, I noticed something this past weekend, maybe it was on Friday or so, but it was a really fantastic post that you had been writing about kind of the transition in your life and how your content has been changing, just given your own life changes. And I want to know how you personally practice like tolerating distress, if there is distress, as this major media presence, because you're getting comments, I have no idea what kind of like grotesque internet stuff occurs. So if you could speak a little bit to that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I think with anyone that has a platform, there is grotesque internet stuff happening. Oftentimes it's like being sent to them privately, or it's happening on like a Reddit thread. And I think it's happening for almost everyone. I feel like I feel lucky that it hasn't completely like clouded my whole vision of the industry and hasn't ruined things for me. And I feel, I mean, part of that is maybe that I'm not that controversial of a figure. Like there's not that much crazy stuff that people could write. I feel like I'm a kind person. And so I maybe some of the people that are being written about all the time are mean spirited. But that said, when you have a platform and you're sharing your life in any way, even if you're not doing anything quote wrong, I think a lot of these negative internet comments are just coming from people who are feeling triggered by your content and are feeling a sense of insecurity within themselves. So then they say something. Actually, I have a really great TEDx talk about a time when I was being trolled by someone, and then I asked her if she wanted to Zoom with me because I was just so fascinated by what I possibly could have done to trigger this behavior. And we wound up having a Zoom call face to face, and we became kind of friends after that point.
Wow.
And it's actually a really interesting TEDx talk. So I highly recommend listening. But in general, from the start of this field, because I told you I was doing videos in college and I was on YouTube when I was really young, and also on the Today Show, I was sort of aware of the commentary that comes from these types of jobs early on. And I remember when I started my role at Refinery 29 as the producer and like host of their YouTube content, I felt like I was kind of opening up this can of worms for myself of, here it comes. Like if I post this video, the comments are going to come and the DMs are going to come. And do I want that for my life? Like, is that what I want? And I thought about it because it would have been really easy for me to just say, I want to protect my peace. I don't need to be subjecting myself to this type of public commentary on the internet. So I'm just going to do a job that's like a little bit quieter on my own. And I really thought about it, and I just came to the personal conclusion that going that route would actually hurt me more internally, because I would be so creatively deprived from the things that I want to do. And so I literally went into the field knowing that me getting my fill of creativity was going to come with a price tag, and that I was open and accepting to it. So I've been able to do a few things to sort of limit a little bit of that. I mean, one thing I've done is on my Instagram stories, I've changed my settings so that the only people who can reply to my story are people who I'm following back.
Oh, that's great.
Which not only saves me like a ton of time, because I used to just get people would just respond with like a thumbs up to like every story, and then I'd have like over 100 nude messages to sort through. So it was very stressful from that standpoint, but it was also that just sort of leaves another avenue open for people to like write back that something you're sharing every day on a story is making them feel some kind of way. So I took that away. And then, truly it was that post you're talking about was sparked by a mean DM that came to me where someone was basically telling me that they felt like ever since I got married and had a baby, that my content has just been so boring, and that they think that I don't really know who I am anymore, and that I'm kind of like all over the place and floundering and trying to figure it out. And they see me one day selling a sweatshirt, and then I'm selling a motherhood guide, and then I'm doing a dance video, and then I'm here, then I'm there. And like, of any time, if you've ever received a negative comment, like, I think anytime without fail, no matter how strong you are or how much work you've done on yourself, like the first moment your eyes lay, what is the word? The first moment you lay eyes on the comment, it's like a momentary pang of like panic internally. And I've learned, you guys can probably attest to this, but I've learned that a lot of that is almost ancestral. Like,
Yep.
it's in our DNA to want to be liked by people, because in the past we would be thrust out of the tribe and killed and burned at the stake. So when we
Right.
find that someone doesn't like us, it's just panic. But I thought about it more, and I was like, at first, that type of statement about me, in the past, that type of statement about me was actually very triggering to me, because I myself was feeling that way about myself. I remember when I left Refinery 29 and I went off to do my own stuff, it was such like a double-edged sword of leaving, because I really wanted the freedom and I really wanted to go, and parts of me felt like I could do it on my own. And then the other part of me felt like I was walking away from this series that everyone loved, and people were like so upset that I left that. But I almost felt like I was personally so done with that series. Like it almost felt like I was, maybe this isn't the best analogy, but like Shirley Temple, who like does like that one show when she's little, and then that's all everyone knows her for forever. And I was just like, I want to do other things and host other series, and I'm done with this, but people were still asking for it. So early on, when people would make comments about how they're like, my content is not good anymore, and it used to be good, but now your content sucks, it would be like me feeling, I feel like they must be right, because I left this great thing to try to do it on my own, and what I'm doing is not as good as what I was doing before. And it's almost like you see yourself going downhill. But after this set of comments, like I really read through it and I really thought about it, and I was just like, if that is the meanest comment someone's going to write about me, that's pretty nice, because basically what they're saying is that I'm evolving as a human, and that I'm multifaceted, and that I have a lot of passions and interests, and I'm doing fine. Like, I don't need this person's approval to show that I'm financially successful or that I'm emotionally successful. And I really think also being in this field, having a really stable and solid at-home life has made those moments far easier to stomach, because I'm like, okay, I don't really need or want that many more friends in my life. So if these people are trolls, like, I wasn't trying to get a new friend out of them anyway. And I'm really set with my friends and my family and my life, and everything's all good.
Awesome. So Lucie, I think we have time for one last question, and I'm curious, what advice would you have for new moms who are considering going back to the workforce or making a transition into the workforce? I'll say double workforce, because Lord knows that being a mom in and of itself, or caregiver in general, full-time job.
Yes.
What advice do you have for them?
I think I would encourage moms to try to view it the way I viewed it, which is basically the mindset of like how, especially if they want to work, like if they are inspired to work, but then they also kind of want to be with their kid. I think it's like, what a best of both worlds scenario to be able to have this baby that is yours, and you will still get plenty of time to spend with this baby. And, hopefully your job allows you the ability to be with them at least a few moments throughout the day, plus every weekend. And like, you still get to enjoy this baby while still being able to enjoy your own personal endeavors, whether it's entrepreneurial endeavors or creative endeavors. And it's just, I remember when I was first going back to work, I sort of thought like, I feel like my life would be easier right now if I was either like full stay-at-home mom, and I was just like, I don't even care about work and I just want to be with my baby, then I could like dive into art projects and meal prepping. Or if I was just like fully working and didn't have a baby and could just like do my work and not worry about it. And then I thought, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. I have the ability to still work, but I can set these boundaries from, in my case, it's with myself of like my work hours. For someone else, it might be taking a job that gives them the hours that they want. And I can really do both. I can still be the mom I want to be when I'm with my child, and then I can still fill up my own cup when I'm on my own. And so I would just encourage them to try to not see it as this either or, but just like we're all living in the messy middle.
Oh, I mean, that's like we are both and people. DBT is about that and. It's taking that but out, that or out, and saying, how can we seek synthesis here? And that's what you just started encouraging everyone to do. And I'm taking that home with me as we bring home our little Una next week on Monday, a puppy, so an
That's
animal baby.
exciting.
Yeah, she's super cute.
How are you spelling Una?
So we actually named her, so back in 2021, we were on a really long road trip. We were like joking around about sandwiches that we love. Our favorite sandwich is a tuna melt. And we're like, how cute is the name Unamel when you take the T off the
that
front
is cute.
and the T up? So her full name is Unamel Galliette. And so it's UNAMEL.
I also love tuna melts.
You do?
Yeah. That's really cute. I had a friend in college named Una, but it was OONA.
Oh, I like that too. I met someone recently with that name, and I was like, should I tell you that I'm naming my dog that? Maybe not.
It's okay. Almost everyone has a dog named Milo, so I know my son has a dog's name.
Oh, I love the name Milo.
Me too, but I definitely know it's like the #1 dog name in the country.
I'm like, well, this is for another time, but I like totally this is not going on the podcast. I totally effed up and was like, I hate XYZ name. And my sister-in-law was like, yeah, we're going with it. And I was like,
oh no, it's okay. My sister did that to me with Milo's middle name before, like I knew it was his middle name. And she was just like, oh, I hate the name Henry. And I was like, oh,
I love the name Henry.
Love the name Henry.
Me too. Well, I feel like it's one of those names that like we knew someone named it growing up and it kind of tainted the name, but his Henry is an acronym for important people. So it's like, it makes it a little better.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so to close out, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And we'd love to direct our listeners as to where to find you, where to find the Motherhood Super Guide. And of course, we'll put that on our Instagram page and the show notes and all that jazz. But if you just want to drop, a couple of your piece of info.
Yeah, sure. So the best platforms to find me would be Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. On Instagram and TikTok, it's Lucie B. Fink, and it's Lucie spelled Lucie BFINK. And on YouTube, you could just search for my name and my channel will come up. I post on YouTube a couple videos a month, so every other week. And then I'm more active on TikTok and Instagram. Instagram stories are more regular throughout the day if you want to know what's happening on an hour-by-hour basis. And then my website, which I'm just obsessed with, it's like such a stunning, gorgeously designed site, is just my name, luciefink.com. And on the site, that's where you'll be able to find, well, on my link tree area on Instagram, you'll find the super guide and any other relevant links of the moment. But on my website, if you click on the shop section, you'll be taken to a new page that has not only the super guide, but also just like a whole selection of my favorite motherhood products, some clothes, also a few things that I've sold on my own, not through other brands, but like I designed a line of hair clips and I sold a couple of coffee cups, things like that. And then also on my site, you'll find a work with me tab where if anyone's interested in coaching or consulting for building your own social media brand or growing a social media account, I do a lot of coaching and one-on-one sessions with people. So you can kind of apply for the sessions right there on my website.
Thank you, Lucie.
Thank you both. This was so great. Congrats on this podcast. And I'm really excited to be a guest.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Lucie.